The New York Giants get embarrassed again on prime time at home. This is what they do. This is what they do. They lose 24-3. Just maybe one of the worst first four games in the history of the NFL. And they're somehow 1-3 because they, actually woke up at the end of the Arizona Cardinal game. But the stats are just crazy across the board with the ineptitude. And, your season is effectively over. If you're being honest with yourself, in the next 2 weeks, you're at Miami, you're at Buffalo, you're looking at 1-5. You're looking at 1-5. That's just the reality of the situation. And the Giants are one of the worst teams in the NFL. This offense is just completely embarrassing. And, the big story is that, they were sacked 11 times, but the offensive line is just horrible to the point where they can't operate. But Daniel Jones, this might have been his worst game of his career. He was that bad. He was completely terrible. Something just seemed off from him from the jump. Just not reacting fast enough, just a tick or two off. And so some of those early sacks were kind of on him. And then what happened in the second half is the Seahawks just teed off on the Giants in the second half. But the 11 sacks, while definitely a huge, huge talking point, slightly misleading as well. And more injuries to the offensive line. John Michael Schmitz gets hurt in the first play of the game, hurts his shoulder. So Ben Bredeson moves over to center. They bring Shane Lemieux in to left guard. He also got hurt by the end of the game with abductor injury. So Glowinski comes in by the end. So your offensive line was Azudu, Glowinski, Bredeson, McKeithen, and Neal. I mean, it doesn't get much worse than that. But with that all being said, this game's on Daniel Jones. And the fumble, which led to the Seahawks taking a 7-9 lead, was bad, where he's able to escape the first guy and then holds on to it and gets stripped and they recover it. And then the pick six, where the Giants have a chance to get back in the game down 14-3, just an absolutely awful decision and a terrible pass. And they bring it back and the game's over at that point. So Jones's record now on primetime games is now 1-12. And, it's just very, very disappointing for this to happen. And look, no Saquon Barkley does not help. That's a big injury. The biggest one is Andrew Thomas, who is out again, and it kind of seems like might have had a bit of a setback. So I wouldn't be so sure, quite frankly, that either of them are back next week. I mean, look, Saquon Barkley had a high ankle sprain. So that's an injury. He shouldn't be back next week. And I'll say he's not. And if he is, he won't be the same. And Andrew Thomas, I don't really feel good about that either. So offense is just a laughing stock and complete joke. And let's cue up some embarrassing stats here. So the Giants, of course, are the only team that does not have a touchdown in the first 4 weeks of the season. What's kind of funny is they're not going to have, the earliest that they'll have a touchdown at home will be October 22nd. That's the earliest, if they get a touchdown in that game, that they will get a touchdown at home. They are the second team since 1940 to be outscored by at least 75 points and have 0 takeaways in any 4-game span. The only other team was the 2011 Colts, who finished 2-14. They don't have a turnover on the season. So the defense, who was okay in this game, I'm not going to give them credit, but I'm not going to kill them either. They were all right, but you know what? The Seahawks offensive line was full of backups. Why can't the Giants tee off on them like what the Seahawks did to the Giants offensive line? So is that asking for too much? And then Drew Lock comes in the game after Geno Smith gets hurt, and on that drive they actually get a touchdown because Noah Fant is wide open, and Wink Martindale said, "Oh yeah, check him chart him how the tackling has improved." I didn't see it there. I didn't see it at all. Bobby Okereke just, leaves the guy wide open and then doesn't push him out. Just push him out. It's not even a matter of tackling. And then Adoree Jackson does a terrible job. And so he goes all the way to the one. Well, we'll get there. The Giants are the fourth team since the 1970 merger to 12 by 11 plus points at halftime in each of their first 4 games of the season. The others, the 2002 Bengals, 2001 Lions, and 1984 Bills. Each of those teams finished 2-14. This is one of the worst teams in football. Like, no doubt about it. And things can change very quickly, where Giant fans, love Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. Now there's major questions across the board. Talent is lacking completely. And just the coaching is also, you know what? Can we maybe just fire Thomas McGahee? He's been the special teams coordinator for 6 seasons. I think his time is up. You know what? If you want to shake things up a little bit, that might be the place to go. But they asked Daboll after the game, and he said, and not that he'd answer it any differently, but he said that no, they're not going to make any changes to the coaching staff. So because the special teams does nothing at all. It does nothing. Eric Gray was back for a punt return and fumbled. Luckily, the Giants recovered it. So they don't provide you anything, and there's just penalty after fucking penalty and just complete unawareness. And also, the genius Brian Daboll decides, I'm going to have a Dory Jackson return punts. You would have thought he would have learned from last year when he had a Dory Jackson return punts, and I think it was either it was the second game that he returned punts. Versus the Detroit Lions, he gets hurt. He was out for the rest of the regular season at that point. But let's do it again. The number 1 corner on your team, we're going to do it again. But let's have Sterling Shepard do nothing. Let's have Sterling Shepard basically do absolutely nothing. Have him return punts. Have just about anyone else return punts than Adoree Jackson. It makes no fucking sense, and I can promise you it will backfire. Because also what you're seeing is, whether it be injury or the fact that Adoree Jackson, you can tell, has really no interest in, sure, if there's something where he can fair catch it, I guess he'll do that. But there were instances where the ball's bouncing and he could have picked it up. He had room. He's letting it go. And you know what? I don't really blame him. So that's a joke. But the Giants and the Jets are the only 2 teams in football who where the offense has not had a single snap with the lead. Yes. That is crazy. The fact there's 2 teams through 4 weeks, most seasons there should be none. That is crazy that you can't even have just a random 3-0 lead. It's something simple. And that has not happened because they basically go into the game and get, they're destroyed basically from the outset. And these primetime games get the Giants off primetime because it's time and time again. And it's also MetLife Stadium. Over the years, the Giants, the records probably come out to about even home and away, I would guess, which, theoretically you should have a better home record. But, they just get killed, this team. And there's so many questions that you have to have for this team. And this was a huge game. You went into the season, you looked at the schedule, and you were hoping home against Dallas and/or home against Seattle that you could get a win or 2 there. You ended up beating Arizona, which was expected. You ended up losing to San Francisco, which was expected. But you were hoping in those home games that you could maybe come out there with a win. What happens? You get outscored 64-3 in those 2 games. That's what happens. So there are so many historical embarrassing stats that we could throw out there. Let's see. No team since it has become a stat has led more sacks in their first 2 home games than the 18 the Giants led this season. That's not a surprise. That's not a surprise. There's so much. And the thing is, not even any attempts for any explosive plays. They only attempted 2 plays over 10 yards. That was it. That's insane. And one of them was intercepted. So it's just crazy that you're in a situation now where I think as bad as things can possibly get, Daboll will be safe. To be fair to that statement, I know that it was a 6-10, what was it? A 6-10 season for Joe Judge. I never would have thought, if you really realistically look back at it, that he would have been fired after year 2, and it did happen. So we have seen crazy shit happen in the past. But with Daboll, I think even if it becomes a train wreck, I think based off of the first year, he'll get year 3. But if this goes the way it's looking like it's going to go, like next year, he's on the hot seat immediately. So that's how things can change quickly. So let's talk about this game. And the offense, like the team stats are a bit misleading. I'm not even really going to talk about that much. Of course, the turnover battle, the Giants lose 3-0. And the Giants, again, no turnovers through 4 games. It's going to be hard to win when your offense sucks and you can't turn the ball over. You're not going to win many football games. Time of possession, Giants 36 minutes to 24 minutes. And again, that is, that makes sense. That makes sense because of how bad it was. Because, look, you throw a pick six. You give up a big play to Noah Fant that puts him at the 1-yard line. Like, Seahawks didn't have to do much, quite frankly. So this game starts out, and it was very reminiscent to the Cowboys, where the Cowboy game, you had this really nice drive, and, it stalls out. And that's what happened here. So Wan'Dale Robinson was one of the few bright spots. I should also mention Daniel Bellinger left the game with a knee injury pretty early. He made a catch, I think got hurt on it. Yeah, I think he's been banged up lately anyway. Also a defensive change, Cordell Flott. Trey Hawkins has pretty much been demoted. And so now Adoree Jackson back to the outside, and Cordell Flott, who had been inactive at least once, maybe twice so far this season, was the starting nickel corner and actually did make a nice tackle in this game. So that was something different. But, a heavy involvement of Matt Breida, and boy, really no rushing success. Breida did have definitely, in the passing game, receiving, he did some stuff, but definitely not in the run game. 14 for 30 for Breida. His longest run was 5 yards. So, Giants, moving the ball pretty well. And eventually, though, and Jamal Adams got hurt. Jamal Adams, this is his first game in in a year, I guess, or so. And he gets hurt in the first drive. It looked to be a concussion. I'm not positive if it was. Might have been something different. But anyway, you get to a 3rd and 3 spot. And in their mind, it was 4-down territory. They had a good rhythm and they were passing the ball pretty effectively. They decided to do a Gary Brightwell 2-yard run. So 4th and 1. Okay, you go for it, which is the right thing to do. And Daniel Jones gets stuffed. They try to QB sneak, which for most teams works, especially the Eagles. To me, when I watch games, those are very effective. It was a long 1 yard, but they don't get it done. So that was, that killed, what was momentum. This game could have looked very different if they take a 7-0 lead. I do think that who knows what comes from that, right? I don't always believe in that sort of stuff, but I think here that was a big loss. Then the next drive, the Seahawks go 3 and out, but not after it got close, where Kenneth Walker, they ruled he had a 73-yard touchdown run, but in fact, his elbow was down. Bobby Okereke, who we'll talk about him, I am just not overly impressed by Bobby Okereke. That was a nice tackle there. He made some plays in this game, but he's so concerned about his celebrations. Dude, make the fucking tackle. Secure the tackle. He's so ready to celebrate when this team gets their ass kicked. Guys, you're losing. You just look like a clown. So, but anyway, the call it works in the favor of the Giants, and it was actually a pretty impressive defensive sequence there, as Kayvon Thibodeau, who was also one of the few guys that did show up in this game, got to give him credit. Thibodeau sacks Geno Smith, and so the drive ends there, and then that's when Eric Gray muffs the punt, but luckily Nick McLeod recovers it. That was the last we saw of Eric Gray returning punts. Then the next drive starts out promising with a Daniel Jones 16-yard run, Darren Waller with a 5-yard catch. Darren Waller has done nothing as a Giant, and I'm not sure if blame is deserved in his direction, but he just has not really done anything. I mean he looked good in that. That Arizona second half he looked good, but besides that, not a whole lot. But anyway, then Daniel Jones is sacked, and then on a 3rd and 11, an incomplete pass short to Darius Slayton. What was that about exactly? And to be honest, that sack that Jones took, I thought that, to me, Jones has avoided that in the past. He didn't feel, and look, it was on his blind side, but I don't know, that I have seen him a lot quicker to more instinctive. So he takes that sack, and then the next play is just the joke. Nothing good was going to come of it. Then the Giants punt. The Seahawks then let's see. There was, they did get a first down, I think, at some point. They did, right? The first play to Noah Fant. But then they take some penalties. Seahawks took some penalties in this game, for sure. That cost them. And luckily, they were able to, the Seahawks did punt here, but it was, I don't know, there was a lot of, I'm not going to get into it, but there was a lot of different things that happened, but luckily the Giants do survive it. It was close, though. It was very close. DK Metcalf's foot was just out of bounds, otherwise that drive would have continued. And then, after a Wan'Dale Robinson first down, the next play, Daniel Jones sacked, fumble, and recovered by the Seahawks. This is late in the first quarter at the Giants' 7-yard line, so is where the ball ends up. So that's a bad job right there. Of course, the offensive line fucks up, but Jones avoids the first one, and then it's like, you gotta feel, that took so long. You gotta know that there's someone near you. And again, he just seemed clueless. And the Seahawks recover the football. And then they score. On the second play, Smith to DK Metcalf. Now, if the Seahawks really wanted to exploit it, they could have. DK Metcalf versus Deonte Banks was a big-time mismatch that, like, the Seahawks, they just didn't need to. But I really think if the Giants were actually competitive offensively, that's something that they should have taken advantage of. So the Seahawks take a 7-0 lead. We go to the second quarter, and let's see, second quarter, you do get on a third down a big play to Matt Breida for 22 yards. Unfortunately, he goes down. Like, if he stays up there, there's more yards to be had, at least 10, 15 more yards, and who knows, maybe even something bigger. And then nothing really happens. Where on 2nd and 6, Matt Breida loses 5 yards. The Giants don't have an offense that can basically afford to have negative plays. They are fucked if that happens. They can't make up for it. So the Giants punt it away. Seahawks get the ball back. Giants defense does the job on this drive. Giants defense does. Yeah, let's see. Where was... This is probably where the Geno Smith... Yeah, this is where the Geno Smith injury happens on this drive, where Isaiah Simmons tackles him inbounds and then into out of bounds. And I thought that it was clean. I heard differing opinions. I'm not sure what differently he should have done there. Smith was upset about it, and he would eventually leave the game. We'll get back to that. So the Giants get the ball back, and they do get their one field goal drive. It's a 12-play, 61-yard drive for 6 minutes and 11 seconds. Isaiah Hodgins has a first down catch. Breida with another big play, 22 yards again. Hodgins with another catch. Wan'Dale Robinson with a first down on a 3rd and 2. But then there's a Paris Campbell play where they lateral it to Paris Campbell, who takes the sack. I think they were trying to do something there. I think he was trying to pass. I think he was trying to throw it, and nothing opened up, and they lost 8 yards. But luckily for the Giants, they're able to get into field goal range, and Graham Gano, who's like one of just the few guys in this team that is really good, hits a 55-yard field goal. So makes it 7-3. So as bad as things were, and as weird as things were, you're only done 4 at this point. But the Seahawks get the ball with 3 minutes left in the half. Drew Lock at quarterback. And they are able to get the job done in what was a really big drive. So first off, a couple of first downs. Lock scrambles for 11. Metcalf 12-yard catch. 2-minute warning. You have a 3rd and 10 at the Seahawks 48. Big pivotal moment in this game, right? If you can get to halftime 7-3, it's not as bad. You're not encouraged, but you're in it. Very much in it. But what happens, Drew Lock finds a wide open Noah Fant, and they were teammates together with the Denver Broncos in that Russell Wilson trade together. And he's wide open, and he's running down the sideline, and Bobby Okereke can't push him out. Adoree Jackson came close. At this point, by the time he gets to Adoree Jackson, you're more like in between the 10 and 15-yard line. And Adoree Jackson, it was close, but there was no conclusive evidence that he got him out, and still, not a great tackle attempt anyway. And originally it was ruled a touchdown, but his knee was down at the 1-yard line. And then Kenneth Walker gets a 1-yard touchdown, and the Seahawks take a 14-3 lead. And then the Giants, just with a really, really bad drive, as is normal for them in these end-of-half drives, they never really do a whole lot of anything. It's a 3-and-out. Giants punt it away. Eventually, you get to halftime, it's 14-3 Seahawks. Then Seattle, Geno Smith back in there, engineers a decent drive. Seattle has all the momentum at this point. However, on 4th and 1 at the 15, they decided to go for it. I thought that was an interesting move by Pete Carroll, and I guess he probably did it because he was confident that, hey, if they don't score, Giants will have the ball at their own 15, the defense will get it done. So he's not wrong in that sense, but they are able to make the stop. Nicely defended play by Micah McFadden on Zach Charbonnet. And so the Giants get the ball back, and at this point, they go 3 and out. Jones is sacked twice on this drive, and so they punt it away. But again, the Seahawks have good field position at this point. But the Giants defense pretty stingy, and Jason Myers misses a 53-yard field goal. So again, Seattle keeping the Giants in the game. And I guess at this point, the defense keeping the Giants in the game. Now here's the key moment. So the Giants now, they're starting to move the ball. They had decent field position after the missed field goal. There is a Daniel Jones run on a 3rd down that gives them the first. Jones using his legs, and on a 4th and 1 at the Seattle 16, he scrambles for 10 yards for the first. Let's fast forward to 2nd and goal at the 5. 2nd and goal at the 5. Daniel Jones, a pass intended for Paris Campbell, which I don't know what was even going to happen there. Anyway, it was short of the end zone. It was pretty well covered. He is picked off by Witherspoon, the number 5 overall pick from the Seattle Seahawks. Looks like a really good player. 97 yards to the house. Daniel Jones, in the open field, attempting to tackle, is not able to do it. And that is the game right there, right? So you could have made it 14-10 possibly. Instead, it's 21-3. And this is an inexcusable interception by Daniel Jones. You just can't have it. You can't defend it. So 21-3. Game's over at that point. Giants, so we go from the 3rd quarter to the 4th quarter, and Giants were moving the ball on this drive, I guess, a little bit. But eventually, let's see what happens here. Yeah, they converted. The game was basically over here. They convert on a 4th down, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Jones is sacked a bunch, and they punt it away. Then the Seahawks go 3 and out in the 4th quarter. Then the Giants, there's an interception by Daniel Jones, and I don't know what he was, I don't know who he was looking to. No one was open, but it was intended for Paris Campbell, I guess, and it's picked off by Quandre Diggs. And it leads to a Seattle field goal. Jason Myers, 34 yards, makes it 24-3. Then the Giants turn it over on downs with a bunch more sacks. Again, the 11 sack number is a bit inflated because just a shit ton of them happened, when the game was already over. And then, then Drew Lock comes in the game. Tyrod Taylor comes in the game. Not much to speak of here. Giants lose 24-3, and they will now head to Miami. And then go to Buffalo, two of the best teams in the AFC. Miami coming off of a beatdown themselves at Buffalo, a division rival for them, and they got crushed. So they're going to be, I think that they're going to notice a drastic difference going from Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs to whatever the Giants are trying to pull off. It is going to feel a lot different for that defense. Because they gave up 48 points this week. It'll be nothing close to that in Miami in week 5. And then, like I said, they go to Buffalo after that. So you are staring at 1-5 in the face. You sit at 1-3 now. It's another season where, it feels like it's over before it even began. And, there's a lot of questions, and, there's going to be a lot of criticism, deservedly so, whether that be to Joe Shane, Brian Dable and the coaching staff, Daniel Jones. Wherever it goes, it's very deserved. Just embarrassing football, especially at MetLife on primetime. This 2023 Giants season is headed in a really bad direction, and it's only going to get worse as the Giants head to Miami next week.